And both of your mics are on? The Ohio State University College of Food, Agriculture, and Environmental Science is a driving force throughout rural Ohio, and in particular, its South Centers located in Piketon, Ohio. The South Centers provides research and educational formats in a number of areas, including horticulture, fruits and vegetables, soil and bioengineering, aquaculture, and business development services. Dr. Tom Worley, Director of South Centers, hosts a monthly South Centers chat. Here's Tom.
Well, good morning and welcome again to the Ohio State University South Centers live programming that we do each and every Thursday morning live. We collaborate with the University of Rio Grande and the Rio Grande Community College in putting these programs together. We work directly with Mike Thompson, who is the Director of the Instructional Design and Media Services Unit at Rio Grande, to provide a variety of educational programs to promote small businesses, business programs and educational programs, students, ag programs, and business organizations. Our mission is to provide educational programming regarding our communities in Southern Ohio, the state of Ohio and surrounding states, and via the web across the world. To this date, over 100,000 viewers have tuned in and listeners to our various telecasts, and there have been over 170 countries that have been touched by the web altogether. Behind the scenes, I want to recognize Dwayne Rigsby. He is our technology specialist here at OSU South Centers that makes all the equipment work. He works directly with Mike Thompson, whom I mentioned before, is in the same kind of a role over at the University of Rio Grande. Patrick Dingle is the executive producer of the programming, and Kimberly Roush is the program moderator here at OSU South Centers. Again, my name is Tom Worley. I am the administrative director here at OSU South Centers, and I'm very supportive of this outreach effort over these multimedia platforms that we are able to employ to extend our reach. And it really delights me this morning to have Todd Steiner, who is down from Worcester, Ohio, and he works at Ohio Agricultural Research and Development Center, which is kind of our mother organization, if you will, here for OSU South Centers on the research side, as well as extension. And Todd is a specialist in enology and manages the lab that we have at Worcester. And Todd, before we get into enology and just what we're really talking about, which I'll spill the beans a little bit, we're going to be talking about wine, which I think is a lot more widely known and of interest to our audience maybe than the word enology, but you'll help us with that, I know. But would you care, Todd, to share just a little bit of background about yourself and how you ended up at Worcester in the position that you are?
Well, yeah, and first I'd like to thank you, Director Worley, for the opportunity to have me here today.
It's our pleasure.
But as far as, I serve as the enologist to the state of Ohio for our commercial wineries, where enology is really the study and research of wine and winemaking. And so I work with all of our commercial wineries here in Ohio, which is a growing industry just like every other state. I started out, I live in Wayne County, and which is about a half an hour east of our ag center there in Worcester, Ohio at OARDC. And I really wasn't involved in enology area as far as interested in college, but I went to Kansas and I came back and I was in charge of the dairy science lab there. And sure enough, the enology lab position came open, and I took that. I became the enology lab manager and studied there in enology under Dr. Jim Glander, who was a big help for our industry. At that time, Dr. Garth Cahoon was on the viticulture side as well. And So learned a lot and studied there in that. And then when Dr. Galander retired, I ended up taking that position. So right now I'm in charge of research and extension to our industry.
Wow, wow. Well, that's quite fascinating, Todd, that I didn't realize you started out in the milk lab at OARDC and then got over to the wine. I just think that that's quite a transition, I would say.
It was a big transition, but
well
worth it. So.
Absolutely. I'm sure that just thinking about the differences in the industry and, you know, the relative size and the makeup of the industry and, you know, the processing of milk versus making wine and, you know, just the sheer scale of it and the different way that it's marketed. They're just all kind of contrasts there. But you've been at this quite a number of years, I think.
Yeah, I've been at the university for about 27, 28
Wow.
years now. And probably 20, 21 of those have been in the enology program. So quite a bit of effort in the grape and wine program there
Absolutely.
at OARDC.
I know you're well known with all the wineries in the state and the big ones, the small ones, and here in Southern Ohio as Gary Gow, who works in the wine industry and the viticulture, grape production here in Southern Ohio from Piketon. I know you're a great asset to his program and becoming better known down here as Gary conducts the workshops that he does here at Piketon and makes the visits, Todd. So we appreciate that partnership with you. And you've mentioned the word enology is kind of the study, the whole kind of process, if you will, of getting from grapes from the vineyard into wine, and that's not a simple process.
No, I mean, you have to start out first with quality grapes. So it starts in the vineyard. I think you've had an opportunity to talk with our viticulture extension person, Dr. Dave Skurlock. So he's a lot of that involved in working with our growers, as well as Dr. Ahmed Dami, who does the research in viticulture. So I work with them on different cultural practices that we may do in the vineyard to enhance grape and ultimately wine quality, because that's where we're leading it through. And work with them on new varieties. We're always looking for new varieties. In the eastern section in the Midwest of the United States, one of the main things is winter hardiness. So some of these new varieties or hybrids that we're working with, it's our desire to increase cold tolerance or less spray intensive, those kind of things, but yet have the quality that we're familiar with in a hybrid or some of the vinifera varieties that we may get, like Cabernet Franc and Riesling and Chardonnay and those that we can still do in Ohio in the right location. So a lot of effort in that on both sides, and that's a big part of what we do.
And we generally, what you find is that we have a quality grape that comes from the vineyards, or does that depend on the season as much as anything?
Well, I think vintage plays a lot of the role. And this year, 2016 vintage, we're fortunate that this past winter was kind to us. We've had 2 previous winters to that, including the polar vortex, that really did a lot of damage for us here in Ohio. We got down to minus 22, minus 23, and those are real-time temperatures.
Wow.
And so a lot of the vines just can't go that low, so we didn't have much fruit production or yields in our commercial industry. That really hurt our industry, but luckily we've been able to rebound. This year was kind. It was a great summer. Fall conditions were premium, which is really what makes a vintage too. And low rainfall, warm temperatures, cool nights, enhances maturity of the grapes. And so the quality this year we're looking to be pretty good. I know from our research perspective, the quality is looking pretty good. So that's nice to see.
Yeah. Something that I think I've learned, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but in what little I've worked with the viticulturist and sat in on some of the sessions, is that a corn farmer, a soybean farmer, he's out to get every last kernel that he can out of the field into the bin. Grape producers, on the other hand, in terms of quality, they'll take quality over quantity, and they'll sacrifice some of the hanging fruit even. Right. Is that correct?
Yeah, and we would really promote that from an enology perspective, from a winemaking perspective. I think we would promote that even more so than on the viticulture side, because we know the importance of controlling yields, lower yields typically on most varieties. Of course, it depends on your training system, will yield a better quality product. We've done studies at the research center. We're looking with Chamberson, a hybrid variety. The lower quality yields, we could test it both on the chemistry side of the equation and on sensory trials, yielded a better quality wine. So yeah, that's a big thing that we look at. Rot is something that we deal with high disease pressure, humidity in the summers like we have. That's a concern, so we need effective spray programs. So it really starts in a vineyard, Tom, and then we bring it into the cellar, and then we can do some of our magic in the cellar and look at different yeast strains or malolactic bacteria strains that we can utilize to enhance quality. And then there's a plethora of other things that we can do in the cellar to look at.
Yeah. Well, I have to confess, I haven't visited the lab that you operate up in Worcester, and I don't know whether it's in the cellar or not, but I think that's lingo for winemaking. You can set me straight on that as to where you operate on the campus up at Worcester. But tell us a little bit about that lab, if you don't mind, and kind of, do you do the work for individual wineries, or do you do mainly the work that the grapes that we produce here in Piketon, Worcester, up at Kingsville?
Sure. First, I would say that we're fortunate that the Ohio Grape Industries Committee we work with, they're out of the Department of Agriculture. We get a lot of our research and extension dollars through them as well. So without them, it would be tougher to deal with. But yeah, as far as cellars, they're typically called cellars because they are typically in a cellar where it's cooler. And that's really important when we're talking about wine quality. We want to keep wine cool. So at the research center, I happen to work in Gurley Hall, and we do have a cellar downstairs. And we have all the amenities that you would find in a commercial winery, plus some, especially in the laboratory, just on a smaller scale. So we have a crusher, destemmer, press. We can do hot pressing. So a lot of different techniques that we try to do different studies, and then we take those research studies and we disseminate that information on an extension basis, whether it be at different workshops that we have, just like the one today here at OSU South Centers with Dr. Gary Gow, as well as our annual conference, which draws about 250 people of our industry at. So that's a fairly large conference, and we bring in other keynote speakers as well. But I do a series of post-fermentation workshops, which I'm actually in the process of doing now, and we're looking at this year's current vintage and the wines that we have. We know we have potential for a good quality vintage, but now is the time we can say, okay, where are we? Where do we need to go? Are we where we need to be on quality, and can we make these wines even better? So I work on a regional basis with these. I've already had one. Next week I have one in Northeast Ohio. And I work on a regional basis where all the winemakers come in, we gather wines together, look at them as a group, have good healthy discussions, and if we do have any wines that might be flawed, then we recommend ways to correct that.
Excellent, excellent. So you mentioned the winemakers. Most of the commercial type wineries would have a enologist like yourself on staff, the winemaker. Is that accurate? And then that's your audience primarily?
Well, the commercial wineries would actually have what we call a head winemaker. Enologist really would refer to somebody that's trained in research and extension at an Institute of Higher Education. So we would then take that information to the head winemakers and work with them on ways that will help ultimately improve wine quality.
Well, quality, we've talked about that all the way through, and I don't happen to be much of a wine drinker at all, but I know this is very paramount. And so, Todd, I think that it's only fitting maybe as we talk about Ohio and Ohio's wine industry, how does that stack up, say, to some place that California wines or Washington State wines? I spent some time in Washington, and they were trying to build their industry, and the competition with those that are established. So
Right.
can you comment on that little bit of the competitive landscape, if you will?
Yeah, sure. And I think that's one of the challenges we deal with in Ohio, as well as all the Midwest. I deal with wineries across the eastern section of the Midwest and giving presentations for their industries. So we're all kind of in that boat where a lot of times consumers say, well, I wasn't really familiar that you produce wines in Ohio or Pennsylvania or Michigan or New York. And, they're really comparing it to the flood of the market of California,
Right.
New Zealand, Australia, Chile. And the good thing is that we're really starting to make progress and make a good impact on wine quality. And some of that's really come through some of the national and international awards that we're winning commercially with our wineries. And that's really good to see. I do judge wines. I serve as a judge on a number of competitions, whether it's regional, national, or international. And it's great to see Ohio shine through with some wonderful wine quality, and we're doing that in vinifera side, whether it be Riesling, which in the northeast part of Ohio where we can do Riesling, some fantastic Rieslings up there that we would put in amongst a lot of the best in the world. Ice wine's a big thing that we're real well known for. We're doing some really high-end white ice wines where we won Best of Show on international scale. So
Wow.
that's good to see. And then Southern Ohio here, a little longer length of season. We can do red wines, maybe even a little better as far as more bold and body, and they're winning some great awards too. So we hope that it's part of our extension, Tom, that through OSU that's helping lead that charge.
Great.
And we're happy to see that the progress that's being made.
Yeah. Well, that's excellent. That's excellent. These competitions, where would they take place at, Todd?
Well, we have our own Ohio wine competition.
Right here in Ohio.
Yep, and that's just strictly for Ohio. That's been ongoing since the late 60s, so a long time. And that's a great way just for our wineries to send that in, get some educational feedback from the judges, and we also do chemical analysis of some of those wines. And then international competitions occur in, obviously California is doing a great job out there, Washington, Oregon. There's New York competitions, the Indy International I judge in. That used to be one of the largest in the country. That was at Purdue, and that's a good competition. There's cold climate competitions up in Minnesota and Wisconsin, and yes, they do have wineries and vineyards up there too.
Wow.
So they're really all over.
Absolutely. And this becomes part of the marketing program to win these competitions, if I understand right. Yeah, excellent. Well, you mentioned we're kind of winding down on time, but we got a few minutes left. You mentioned Ohio excels in the quality of ice wine, and that's not wine on ice cubes. That's something different. I know that much. Help us with ice wine.
Right. Good question. And I get that question a lot. I actually call it liquid gold because what we have to do now, there's on the federal side of things, which is under TTB regulations, Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau, I believe. Have finally made a law or legislation that to be called ice wine, the grapes have to freeze on the vine. So a lot of freeze thaw processes go through and are beneficial for that, for the quality of ice wine. But typically you would get out in the middle of the night at about 18 degrees for a period of 8 hours. You want it to be for sure. So you're really kind of pressing marbles. You're picking marbles. What happens is that sugar solution comes off first. As you press it, it leaves the ice behind, so it concentrates the sugars. So we're looking at about roughly 30 degrees Brix, which is a way to measure sugar, and we end up with about 18 to 20% once fermentation's done, as far as residual. Where a normal wine that has some residual sugar might be about anywhere from 2 to 4%, or some of the sweeter wines 8%. So we're talking 18 to 22%, and that's really why we classify it as a dessert wine. And we're doing really good quality in Ohio with that.
Absolutely. do I understand that some really avid supporters or enthusiasts about ice wine will actually volunteer to show up in the middle of the night and help out as volunteer labor to do this?
As crazy as that may seem, I think they're expecting to get some of the fruits of their labor in the finished process.
There you go. Yeah. Well, Todd, this has been very, very fascinating, and I think you touched a little bit, but you're actually not only a judge, but you serve on the board of a professional society that you mentioned. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's our American Society of Enology and Viticulture. I served previously as one of the board of directors, and just recently got voted on again. And it's an honor. It's a lot of work, but it's really... Sure. Members of our higher research institutes of higher education from the Midwest. I serve on the Eastern Section board, so really it's pulling that research information together, where we have a major conference and we talk about what's going on in research across the Eastern Section. Could be at Cornell or Michigan State or Ohio State or Purdue, and then we have presentations from grad students, which are a big part of our project. So, and then ultimately we try to get that information to the industries in each state as well.
Yeah, well, this is a great way to share, because I'm sure you would agree with me. There's not enough staff to really do in any one state what really needs to be done. So this idea of collaborating across the states, as you are talking about in this professional society, is a way to use leverage and contribute what we do here in Ohio, but gain from a multitude of other states across the Midwest, because I think that most every state has some wine industry. It seems that this is not unusual. So Todd, I think we're just wrapping up with a few seconds to go, and I've got time to sincerely thank you for taking time out of a busy day to come yet with the all-day workshop here in Piketon, and I think we have a pretty good audience planning to show up, and you'll be presenting more details of the enology program and how things have worked out, and sharing that back with the industry, which is exactly what OSU Extension and OARDC desire to do, is to interact and help support agriculture industries here in Ohio. So with that, I think we can thank you once again and wish you best as you continue to work in the cellar up there at Worcester, and we'll look to see you back here again one of these days.
Pleasure to be here.
All righty.